or be murdered where they sleep. At this church in Rio, a dozen children were shot to death. While that crime over 20 years ago caused revulsion around the world, the fact remains that street children continue to be murdered as a means of making them disappear. At their gathering place in Nairobi, called the Roundabout, Emmanuel and his friends naturally live in fear of the police.
That place is a hideout. It's a hiding place. It has an outlet. So they can also pass through the Nairobi River, they can go the other side. When they saw the police, they can run away and go up other town.
They call them social halls, but really they are just abandoned buildings used to warehouse children and get them off the streets and out of the view of the public. It's a handy short-term solution if you need to clean up the downtown business area to promote tourism. This social hall is notorious for violence. Emmanuel was repeatedly picked up and deposited here by the police. The only way we could film was with a hidden camera. The same held true in Nairobi's jails.
In most of these police stations, you'll definitely find children in police cells. Because one, we don't have enough facilities. You'll get them being mixed with hardcore offenders, and at times it's a big problem to these children.
If you're a street boy or girl, you can spend months in these cells with no charges and no representation. And since you have no identity, you could disappear. And who would know?
Nimeshaishikwa mara nyingi, kapelekwa Central. Ukipelekwa Joseph Kang'ethe, huko Joseph Kang'ethe, unapigwa, kazi ni nyingi, shule hatuendi vizuri. Sasa tukipelekwa Joseph Kang'ethe, tunaenda tunaroroka tena tunarudi hapa town.
Kwa jela mnaekwa na watu wakubwa?
Tunawekwa na watu wakubwa. Kwa jela mnakula githeri mbichi, nyama mbichi. Wale vijana wakubwa wakikushika wanakutomba matako, si ndio? Alafu anapata 20. Sasa sisi tuna survive tu peke yetu na maisha ya Mungu.
Street children understand human psychology. Some have elevated begging to an art form. But Emmanuel wasn't like that. He had more on his mind than a handout. From day one, he was after Georgia, my wife and partner. He wanted to connect.
Every day, Emmanuel would take me by the hand and insist on talking to me with his bit of English. He just singled me out, called me Mama, and worked me over.
We ran out of time in Nairobi. I had made plans to travel across Kenya to its westernmost city, Kisumu, to film in the slums there. Emmanuel had ingratiated himself with half the team. My wife is the voice in my ear. Nobody realized it at the time, but the film we set out to make was changing. Emmanuel had adopted us. We just didn't know it yet.
Miles go by. The rutted roads are literally painful to ride, and I feel haunted by Emmanuel. The night falls, very dark, and our van lurches on for hours and hours. At about 2 a.m., we stop for gas, the only vehicle there, and like ghosts out of the darkness, children swarm the van. They're the Emmanuels of the countryside, up all night to sell roasted corn, food too valuable for them to eat. Michael? My name's Georgia. My name's Georgia.
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 Yes.
What's your name?
My name is John Karanja.
John.
John Karanja.
Karanja. Seeing these boys, I suddenly have a dread that Emmanuel could be dead by the time we return to Nairobi.
Kisumu is a landscape of children fending for themselves. AIDS has orphaned over 1 million children in Kenya. And you see them everywhere. We visited a slum near Kisumu called Nylanda. Children poured out of their homes to welcome us.
Who didn't get one?
Okay.
On our return to the States, we learned that Nylanda had been the center of tribal violence. Homes burned, people murdered, children displaced and orphaned. We'd heard a similar story from a lost boy earlier.
Wakikuyu wakaanza kufight na Wamasai. Siku moja, siku yenye tulianza kufight na Wamasai, mama na baba wakatoroka. Nikachukua katoto kangu na mimi katoto ketu tukapotea nako. Sasa nilikuwa nimemshika mkono, tukaona gari nyingi zikikuja, nikamwachilia mkono. Tukachukua mimi nikakaacha na huko na mimi nikapita. Nikakagoja upande mwingine wa barabara, sikukaona. Sasa ndio askari mwingine alikuwa huko kwa barabara akanichukua.
Hunger has become its own borderless country, driving children in waves to look for food.
Hapa town unakaa na nani? Kama sasa umekula nini tangu asubuhi? Okay.
Inside the club and in the parking lot, girls trade themselves for food.
Takubaiya.
Sai.
Kwanza.
Mwata kenye nakuda ni kuku, mayai huwa sikudi. So maybe kudishi. Ndo asikuwe na wasiwasi.
Ako wapi saa hizi?
Ndio tunaenda kwa nyumba.
90% of the children that we have in the streets are forced commercial sex workers, because in one sense or another they have to live and they have to eat, and they come from well below poverty line stricken families.
We spent a night with a hidden camera in Nairobi clubs, filled with children selling themselves, like this little girl with a beaten face.
Nilikuwa na 14 years. Sasa venye masomo ikaisha, nikaona nitajaribu any means. Nifanye nini nitakuwa nikijilipia. Sasa ikabidi.
We also met girls at a tailoring school who paid their tuition by going to clubs at night. There's a group in Nairobi trying to help these girls. For $500, you can train a girl to become a tailor and buy her a sewing machine, giving her a business and a chance at a new life.
When I started seeing children come into the streets, it was almost only boys. But now we know that there are girls there out there, that there are girls who are now getting children out there with these boys.
Pia vijana kuchokoza wasichana, tujua hizi fight na vijana.
Unachika sasa wanatuweka mabolo wanatuacha. Sasa wenyewe tunabakia na shida, unaona. Sasa juu mimi niko na mtoto na kuanga na shida ya mtoto. Juu sasa venye nilipata hiyo mtoto.
When a girl gets a child out there in the street, what does that really mean? Start talking about street families. It's almost inconceivable that children should be allowed to be raising families in the streets.
Today, every country has a population of street children, including the United States, where over 1 million children are homeless each day.
Remember, these are not figures on a page. These are children of flesh and blood. I mean, think of your own child.
Just a few minutes' walk from the roundabout is a shelter called Maisha House, where Emmanuel goes almost every day.
The resources that we have here, one, we can only afford to give them water. We can only afford, maybe when it's really pushing us a lot, to give them maybe a cup of porridge.
Constantly in financial crisis, Maisha House is always on the brink of closing its doors. It closes at 5 p.m., just in time to put the children out on the street for the most dangerous time of day, which is night. Used by hundreds of street children daily and located right in the center of Nairobi, Maisha House could provide real help, if only it had some funding. It made me think of Charles Dickens' London, where children were treated like dirty vermin. What a waste. For Emmanuel, like most of the new arrivals in Nairobi, slums like Kibera become their new home in the city. In fact, half the population in Nairobi live in slums like this one. This is the densest slum on earth. It's a perfect maze. Perfect for running illegal business of any kind.
We are talking of a slum, and we are talking of a place whereby we have a population of about 1.5 million people on a stretch of only 8 kilometers. Meaning the houses are very closely together, and the other issue is hygiene. And also drainage is a problem. We normally call them the flying toilets, whereby people, because of lack of toilets, they could use the polythene papers and then just throw it out. So you'll find it like everywhere.
Kibera doesn't feel safe to move around in. Our Kenyan crew was uncomfortable here, and so were we. We moved quickly in the company of Sister Joyce, a Catholic nun whose work is visiting children with HIV. But we still weren't welcome.
You see these people, they don't have food. They tell you, you come to their homes, they tell you they haven't taken lunch. They don't know what they're going to take for supper. They didn't have breakfast. They have nowhere to sleep. So it touches me. And I've stopped taking things for granted, knowing that there are people who go hungry, not for a day, but for days, without food, and they don't know where they'll get the food from.
Nimefurahi. Nimefurahi. Unanikumbuka? Naitwa? Naitwa nani?
Mwalimu.
Mimi ni sister.
Sister.
Sister Joyce.
Sister Joyce.
Yes. This is our child.
How are you?
How are you, Musungu? So this is the child. She started going to nursery school just next to our place there. And it is very convenient for us because when she's in school, in case she falls sick, we are there to monitor. We are there to take her for medication. If she's very hungry, she comes and says, "Sister, I'm very hungry." I give her something to eat. Isn't it, Jacinta? Ukisikia njaa uniambia kabisa. But I can say the whole situation is quite overwhelming. It's quite overwhelming. It's unbelievable that really human beings stays in this particular situation. I've never believed it, but this is the reality.
Kibera was devastated in the riots following the contested presidential election in Kenya. Murder and mayhem made it impossible for Sister Joyce to make her regular rounds and to make sure that Jacinta and the other children received their medicine.
Especially, I get angry with the government. They should know what the Kenyans are going through. The so-called MPs, they're paid a lot of money that can do a lot in the slums.
The thing is that a majority of the children that you've seen on the streets are the children that have moved out from their families within the slum areas. That's because of the hard life they're facing. And then they end up on the streets.
Hata sasa nikishikwa nipelekwe nyumbani, naenda na nitarudi tu. Hata kama ni kukufa, aniue, lakini siwezi ishi na yeye.
I'm ashamed to admit that I wanted to leave as well. Whether we film for a few hours or a month, I know that eventually I'll return home to a warm bed, a nice meal, and a hot shower. But all of these children will be left in the garbage and the muck. Not just of Kibera, but of places like it, all over the world. Georgia has been bugging me to find Emmanuel. She wants to see him, to know he's okay. We've talked about helping him, though we're uncertain how to go about it.